this penguin is a lot bigger than it seems. People are asking, it's like, I've been seeing this penguin everywhere. It's the penguin, right? Like you see people saying like, it is the penguin. Pudgy Penguin is pushing to be the most famous penguin brand in the world.
Guys, welcome back to another episode. The person joining us here today needs no introduction. He is growing, scaling, creating one of the greatest IP brands to ever exist, or going to ever exist, not in just Web3, but in the world in general. Start from the internet. Peter, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. By the way, the hoodie is just insane. Super heat. The contrast there is very nice, my friend. Very nice. Great pickup. Great pickup.
Quick flash. Very quick flash for the audience there. Michael, joining us as well from Wallet Guard. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Awesome to be here with y'all, and super excited to be talking about this legendary project with Peter.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys both for jumping in. And then obviously, John will throw up your handles on screen as while you're talking, so everyone that listens in can definitely give you guys a follow. Peter, I do want to start off. I think, a lot of interviews kind of go into the topic of your background, all that stuff. I don't think we would do that justice going over again for the 100th time over the course of your current career in Web3. I do want to start off with a bunch of brand questions. Obviously, growing the brand, wanting to grow the brand over Web3, even beyond. The first question is, so what is brand? And then how would you quantify it?
Great question. So in my eyes, brand is a feeling that people get. It is the automatic association to what the experience that kind of follows that brand, that identity. So for instance, you kind of close your eyes and, Seth Godin did a really good way of explaining it is you close your eyes and if you ever had to think like what a Nike hotel looks like, right? I think you can get a somewhat of a resemblance of what a Nike experienced hotel looks like. And so that to me, in my opinion, is also what a brand seems to be, is that idea of like, if you had to close your eyes and you had to, put this brand identity to the case and just everything that kind of encompasses the consumers, the products, the tone, the messaging, right? If you had to close your eyes and create another use case for it in a different environment, can you get the feeling from that brand in itself? And can you kind of get an idea as to how it would feel and how it would look? And so that to me is the brand. Additionally, it's the promise, that comes with the brand, right? So your mission and what you set out to do, and I guess just the overarching objective for the company.
Awesome response. Peter, obviously a lot of brands have been built successfully, our industry natively, as well as, wider global audience. There's a lot of them that we can name. IP, very, very strong IP. Obviously, when talking about brands, I think we do have to measure their strengths. How would you measure the strength of a brand, Peter, and then give an example of this?
I think it depends on what the brand thinks, their core reason of existence is, and how they measure their staying power. Whether that's revenue, right? Or, well, I mean, unless you're a nonprofit, it's like, how do you measure strength? I think it's definitely has to do with market penetration. It has to do with kind of leading a category, right? So, what I think TAM is a different way to approach it, but are you a leader in that category, right? Or at least do you hold some sort of place, right? Out of the top 5 brands, are you in that bucket of the top 5 brands in that specific niche and category? And I think that's a true metric to kind of look at is, do you lead this industry, or are you innovating in this industry to kind of lead by example? And then I think from the surface level, people will measure you as a really successful, strong brand. But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters if the company is making money or not. But if you're measured by that metric, you should have some sort of strong revenue because you've already been able to obtain some sort of presence in the space?
I'm going to focus my questions based around security and onboarding, because I think that's one of the biggest things that is an oversight, especially with a lot of projects that put having a chief vibes officer over having a chief security officer. So what has Pudgy Penguins focused on when it comes to making onboarding safe, and also being able to provide the right tools, the right resources, so that when people do bring their hard-earned money into crypto and invest in a penguin, they're not stuck there SOL at the end of the day saying this whole space is a scam. So I want to see what, obviously I know what you guys have been doing, but definitely want to give a big shout out to you guys for putting security first and trying to see that.
Yeah. Huge shout out to the team there. I mean, I don't have much visibility and oversight into that. From what I know, based on trying to create a very credible brand, right, especially in the space, is I think the first step is a very transparent, clear communication, which is done traditionally through orientation of some sorts, right? I think we're in this kind of world where not a lot of people know where to go, and access certain resources and certain tools. They don't know where the real source of information is. And so instinctively, you would kind of rely on a person that you kind of look up to, or a person that comes off trustworthy to kind of communicate that information to you. And so I think what Pudgy Penguins does really well is when we do have new members come in, I think going through a kind of series of orientation seminars / resources and feedbacking, just to kind of get people on the same page. And then when they do have questions, it's important for us to be able to guide these people towards the right place. And so doing that, it kind of strengthens the bond between the people who just joined and, the people who already in the community. So I think that plays a really pivotal role in terms of just kind of making the expectations crystal clear, and also taking preventative measures to not, get baited into a wrong situation. I think the Web3 space as a whole needs to be leaning very much into how do we optimize frictionless onboarding experiences, and how do we make them very intuitive, so it doesn't feel like you're going through this uphill journey where it's spread across different forums and you have to ask people for advice. Like, it's all streamlined, it's very clear, and it's second nature, for people to adopt. I think right now there's a huge learning curve where people are scared of what they don't know, and I feel like because of that, that's why the adoption curve right now is so high, and the velocity of how quickly we onboard people to the space is really slow, especially with like all the lingering, Ponzi-nomics out there, the scam artists, like the traditional negative connotations that come with the crypto space in itself. It all really starts off with us. So people such as yourself, if you have good intentions, if the communities are strong, if the onboarding journey is ironclad and it's tried and tested, I think that's how we approach safety one step at a time.
Yeah, I think, and to say to you guys what you guys have done with, for example, different community members like Bo, who really focuses on security. You put him at the forefront. You guys engage with his posts. He has soulbound tokens so that people can prove that they've passed certain security courses. So big shout out to Bo and everybody there at the security team for really putting that at the forefront. Because like I said before, a lot of projects just do not care until somebody loses everything. So to be able to see that you guys engage with those community members is a massive win.
Yeah, it's honestly a big fear, especially on like my end, because our objective is to take the traditional consumers that we have that's kind of compounding and growing on the Web2 side. So think Instagram, think just Pudgy Penguins' presence in the retail landscape. If you think about how do we actually bring people into the Web3 space, man, there are so many risks of killing the brand's reputation, right? And so being able to do that in a very thoughtful and a very meticulous way, where it's very high touch. These systems aren't built out for scalability yet. They're really hard to do at enterprise level. And so I think our community, other project communities, other brands, crypto projects, platforms, etc., I think everybody's trying to, or at least from what I know, everybody should try and is trying to figure out systems in which this process of taking an everyday consumer, giving them that much more exposure into the space and walking them all the way through to best practices, just to kind of stay safe and avoid some of the experiences that we've kind of gone through ourselves with phishing scams and false promises and things like that. But it fundamentally starts with us as people and who do we want in the space. And so long this narrative of like Ponzi-nomics, pumping something for your own selfish means and dumping it on somebody, I don't know if that's going to change so soon, because people are looking to kind of run up that bag. And until there's a lot more influence in the space, people like Bo, right, who come in and put the prioritization of security first, until those people start owning that narrative in the crypto space, I think the adoption component is going to be really, really difficult from a security standpoint.
Yeah, and to end with my thought on that, it's the last thing that you want to deal with is onboarding a friend, onboarding a family member, and then getting that phone call the next day where they're like, yo, I thought it was a free mint. What happened to all my NFTs? This is the exact reason why it's so important to talk about this stuff. And I think really putting it at the forefront, like it's kind of like a default. It's a necessity at some point. If you're not talking about security with these people, you're setting them up for failure. It's a disservice at the end of the day.
Peter, if we can unpackage Overpass here for a second, if you had to look on a scope of like 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years out, and you reverse engineered what that would look like, what would you classify as a success?
There's the side of the decentralized component to building brands, right? And what the beauty about NFT projects as a whole is, if you find success in a company and the team with a great IP or a great asset that you can obtain and hold and grow with, right? That kind of shares similar beliefs. I think tools like Overpass will kind of expedite that process, where people who are also holding that asset can also participate in the evolution of that brand and how fast the adoption of that IP, or in our case, it would be IP, so I'll just speak for IP in itself. And the really good use case for Overpass, it's like, how many times can we go out there and get Pudgy Penguins in as many different rooms as possible across different touch points? And so with platforms like Overpass that kind of strip all the frictions of licensing agreements and negotiations and just the really complex jargon that comes with it, I think it helps bolster the growth for that IP. And if you're holding that underlying asset, right, you just see benefits on both sides of the spectrum, right? Something like this hasn't been done before. It is challenging the status quo, and it is challenging the big behemoths in the space, and it is making everybody think, well, instead of one guy making all the profits, instead of one big guy making all the revenue, why not start distributing this to everybody who's been a part of this journey? And so if you're able to attach yourself to a company as early as like ours, for instance, and those people who have the digital collectible that is somewhat kind of grows in parallel with the company's like Web 2 presence, right? It's hard to directly kind of make that correlation, but you can kind of assume that the more the Pudgy Penguins expands and the more rooms that Pudgy Penguins is, the more your asset appreciates over time. And Overpass is just a tool to help people not only creatively and freely express themselves using the IP, but also be able to benefit in the short term while you're looking at the long-term horizon. So that's the long answer and how I would summarize Overpass.
It's a good take. Peter, have you guys thought about like what you said, but as a byproduct, it becomes a turnover machine for brand evangelists?
Yeah, I think we don't really know where this is going to go. Right at the end of the day, we're so early here. I think it's just a matter of feeling it out and seeing early days of success and having high enough conviction to double down on whatever thesis we have here. Right now, it's designed to help solve a huge problem for our business model, a business model that may not be effective for other companies, but for our use case, and I think for the next 5 projects or the next 5 companies that I can point to directly, I think they'll share the same use case and they'll need a platform like Overpass, What happens in the next 2 years or 3 years is all subjective to market conditions, is subjective to consumer sentiment. And I think us just being open-minded to be able to evolve the platform to help solve additional problems outside of just our ecosystem is something that we're very much open to.
I think that's one of the great things that Pudgy Penguins did the right way, which is you basically have thousands of KOLs. You have people that understand how they can use this IP, how they can create their own brands out of it. And it's not just a bunch of community members asking, what's the floor price? So now you have natural growth. And like Andrew said, it's like compounding in on itself because people feel like they actually own this IP and they can create a brand out of it. So it's just amazing to see it being, what you guys have done and really what the users have made out of it instead of just wondering, when am I going to be able to sell? Like no one cares about selling. Everyone's here to continue building with each other. And I think that's what the Igloo is all about.
Amen to that. Peter, I have to ask, and this is probably a touchy subject, and I think Michael's probably touched upon this as well. Why do you think, without naming any names, most teams struggle to, and saying this the correct way, most teams struggle at generating any revenue that doesn't include liquidity events? Like, what do you think it is? Like, what's the biggest hurdle?
Well, first and foremost, I think everybody, the people that I know and the operators that I know are operating from a place of good intentions. I think the space is also fueled by personal agendas. And that's the very easy one is how do you take advantage of this very much kind of wild west opportunity and create something for yourself, whereas like in a traditional world or just kind of growing up the ladder, it's going to take you generations to basically do that, or many years to be able to obtain this level of wealth. And if you can time the market, time the momentum, and you have a good general understanding of the space as a whole, if you play your cards right, you can end up just like these other project founders. My thing is, if you 99.9%, and this is very close to every single project in the space, and I'd be very curious to know which ones are on the contrary, have high burn and almost no sources of real revenue, right? You launch a project that costs you $50,000, $100,000 to basically go pay an artist to slave away to draw a bunch of renderings and a bunch of different iterations. Sure, some of the newer projects today have taken a much more stylistic and very brand-oriented approach, but still, to basically kind of point to some of the other players in the space, they faced such large injections of cash with zero operational overhead, where the margins are damn near 95% plus, if not above that, right? They face generational wealth in a matter of minutes. And then you expect these people who traditionally you would spend years obtaining this wealth, years. And slowly as you're growing, you start understanding the value of a dollar, right? And you're creating value, putting it out there in the space. The way that the NFT space has worked out is people have taken advantage of the system, and they have very much taken advantage of this idea and launched their projects without putting thought, what happens after? And so all these projects in the space right now are dealing with the consequences of the after, where they have so much money in the bank. How do you expect to work super, super hard when you're already rich? It's a mindset shift, right? And so, speaking for ourselves, buying this company was already a huge cost to us, right? Where did we obtain this cash? We did it because we built other businesses prior, right? We worked our way up here. We don't pay ourselves a large salary like most of these other project founders do because we don't have hundreds of millions or tens of millions of dollars in the vault, right? We raise capital to basically help us prove this vision by learning from mistakes of others. So I don't want to necessarily crucify others in the space because they're the ones that kind of fell on the cross for us, right? To then pave the way and do it right. But I'm hoping that at some point they can figure out how to generate those sources of revenue and not extract additional liquidity from holders, or at least make it seem like it's just one big Ponzi scheme where they just keep siphoning more cash out. So long as your intentions are intact, and so long as you're actually trying to go out there and build a real business and setting very clear expectations, not saying, you're starting an NFT project and you're going to dominate games, you're going to do a movie, you're going to have collabs and partnerships. Like, dude, if this was that easy, why not? Why hasn't any other operator in the entire world has done the same thing? Why do you think that you can compete with Disney or launch the next biggest IP brand? Like, that takes a big enough balls, right, to say that in the first place. Sure, you could do that theoretically with a huge influx of cash. And so when you go out there and you mint your first project, maybe you can look at that as a massive investment moment into proving your thesis. And now you have all this capital, excess capital. Now you went from a brand operator to an investor. Now your mindset needs to shift into how to get a perfect return on every dollar that you spend. And unfortunately, projects today have really, really high aggressive burn that are just chipping away at their financial reserve. And I'm worried that in the next year or two, you're going to see very, very few projects that withstand this. You're going to see a lot of projects that are going to trim down in staff. They're completely going to scale down because reality is going to hit, and it's going to tell them, well, you're not going to face this type of, revenue that you did on the NFT side. Your only bet, especially with investors and, just this applied pressure from external partners and people who hold NFTs, investors, if you raised a round, you have all this external pressure to go out there and do additional massive liquidity events, like go do another mint. And even though your own intentions are pure and you want to build this real brand with 100% integrity, and you're preaching this like mission that you're going to build this next big greatest IP brand, unfortunately, the position you put yourself in forces you to continue down this path until you can break even, exceed your valuation, and put yourself in a place where you're completely let go of the guilt. And unfortunately, you're not going to see that with every big project. You either need to rip the Band-Aid and you need to say, hey, look, we're either a fine art project, right? And we mark a moment in this time, right? When you look back 5 years, you can look back to 5, 10, maybe 10 massive projects just in one lens. And you could say, these are the only top 10 projects that withstood the test of time, but they just stripped themselves of all expectations, right? And they just made it simply about the culture, simply about the art, and did small little microcultural transactions to keep themselves alive and set absolutely no expectations, because that's what led a lot of these project operators to complete failure with a lot of FUD and low sentiment around their project, because people completely got desensitized to what it's like to build a real business from scratch because they have all these millions of dollars sitting in the bank. And I'm not the one who's like preaching this Robin Hood mentality where it's like strip the poor, you strip the rich and give it to the poor. Most of those project founders were maybe multimillionaires before, but fundamentally it's like, how do you expect somebody to really bust their ass 16 hours a day, grinding out, making sacrifices, losing hair, losing friends, imbalanced life, right? To build a real passionate business when you have money sitting in the bank, right? That just strips all motivation to work hard. That strips your mentality on how you extend that lifetime runway, right? And then when you look down the barrel and you see only a couple $1 million left in the bank, you have no paths of viable revenue anywhere, you're going to make the ultimate hard decision where you start stripping down the business model and trying to get it to very simplest life form. And so that's kind of like my take on the entire space as a whole, and trying to withstand the test of this time that we're in right now. And they're just the place that they're in that's cornering them to constantly do these mints here, to keep extracting liquidity from their holders.
Yeah, I think one of the great things that you guys did was also, like you said, as builders, it's delayed gratification. You didn't come out and say, hey, this is the roadmap and we're going to be building a metaverse and we're going to be doing the merge. You guys built all of it and then slowly trickled it out because it was already ready. It wasn't something that you were saying, hey, we're going to take your funds and we're going to build this. Now you already built it and then you gave it to the users. And I think that's the best formula to handle it in a way where, again, the users are not sitting around expecting and waiting for all these promises. You didn't make any promises. You didn't hold anything to them and say, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. You actually did it first and then you brought it to the table. Yeah. So big shout out to you guys for that.
Yeah, I think from its core, we definitely, we didn't set the wrong expectations, but we did make promises. Our promise was that we were going to turn this brand around. we're going to make this penguin the most famous penguin in the world. Now, if you look at the steps that we took to achieve this, it's by diversifying our social presence, by pasting our penguin everywhere, right? To make it embedded in internet culture, in meme culture, we had to make massive strides in spreading the IP as far as possible, which then inevitably compounds this perception that this penguin is a lot bigger than it seems. People are asking, it's like, I've been seeing this penguin everywhere. It's the penguin, right? Like you see people saying like, it is the penguin. Pudgy Penguin is pushing to be the most famous penguin brand in the world. There's Happy Feet, there's Penguins of Madagascar, there's Club Penguin, there's Surf's Up, etc., right? But there's no brand that's actually been built that somewhat has kind of like a universe baked into it, that then is embodied as part of the internet culture. And that at its core is our North Star. It's just to make our penguin brand the most famous penguin brand in the world. With that comes monetization. With that comes, success or failure. But the way that the steps that we take to kind of get there have all been very much executed on, and they've been made very public, which then raise the sentiment that Pudgy Penguins is fulfilling their promise, which we will circle back to your first question, which is brand, right? We've made a brand promise, and we've been slowly fulfilling that promise, and we've been upholding that promise, effectively creating positive sentiment, right, around the Pudgy Penguins name. And our job today is to protect the name now. Now we need to be masters of saying no to opportunity, as great as it may seem, because it could potentially harm the brand from where it is now. So as much as we'd like to say yes to as many opportunities and associate ourselves with, startups and, very amazing people, now we just need to pick our battles and play a very strategic game of chess, because either here we peak out and fall out, or this is where we keep standing and we find some sort of long-term sustainability in this space and breaking through the barriers of this Web2 industry that we're in.
You definitely broke through the barriers when the normie friends are sending Pudgy Penguin gifts and they're not even in NFTs. Like that was like the wake up call for me. My parents are sending it over. My friends are sending it over. Eventually my parents actually got their own Pudgy Penguin. So that was really cool to see.
Nice. The toys or a digital collectible?
Yeah. Well, this is what it is. It's like, they actually got a big Pudgy Penguin.
Wow.
And this was like 4 months ago, and the price is like 5x since then. So they're very happy about it. But again, at the end of the day, they're not like, oh yeah, let's just sell it. They understand that this is something that is going to be around for decades, right? Like this is something, like you said, it's the face of the most famous penguin. And I think you guys are really executing that. And it shows even in the numbers on Web2, like you said.
If Michael's parents see this, shout out to them for being part of the community. Up on Twitter.
Yeah, literally shout out to the huddle. We got more.
Let's go.
We got the right type of people in the huddle. Speaking of security, I mean, was it easy to are they a part of the community, the huddle? Watching them join this? Like, did you walk them through it? Did they have the right type of questions?
Yeah, so it's really funny because they wanted to get into NFTs as they saw me, my journey in NFTs and doing Bored Ape Yacht Club and Yuga. And one of the first NFTs that I actually helped mint for them ended up revealing to be a mega coda. And, they were able to eventually sell that for over 180 ETH. And then they put that right back into more Bored Apes and Pudgy Penguins and Neon Cats. They were like choosing the ones that they wanted. They just got a fucking kick out of it. So it was really cool.
Chad parents.
That's one for the boomers. Yeah. That's one for the boomers.
And the best part is, like, when I told them about the offer that was on their mega coda, like a week after it was minted, my mom literally over the phone at 5 o'clock in the morning was like, diamond hand it. I was like, fuck yeah.
That's so awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a lot of good stuff. You guys mentioned the gifts. Peter, what is the current gift count? I think it's 10 billion plus. I've stopped looking after 10. I said, these guys are just going to run it up. I'll look back in 6 years to see where we're at. We're currently at with the gifts in the billions.
Yeah, we're in this, man, I don't want to be wrong here, but I think we're in the 20 billion or
didn't you pass Disney? Like, you guys passed some
they
crazy
passed Star Wars, I think Pokemon, which is literally next question.
It's mind blowing.
The thing with me is, like, I don't let it get to my head.
Yeah.
And so I try to stay off
The high
CT as
supply,
much as
my own
possible.
supply
Yeah.
type stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're about almost at 16 billion, correction.
Oh my
so
god! See, it's crazy because I was a Pokemon kid growing up. I was born in 1997, so I'm 26. So Pokemon was my entire childhood. And
Yeah.
like Peter, I have to ask, like Star Wars, Pokemon, like these brands in terms of like stage and life cycle have been around for 20 plus years, like my entire life, right? How does it feel that you guys have lapped them in internet gifts? And then how do you commercialize that? Because they went through a ton of stages of development, product development, IP development, all that stuff. Like Star Wars, like a ton of movies in the early 2000s. Like they went through Hollywood, the films, like they did all that stuff. And you guys pass them in gifts in under 2 years. Like how does that feel? And then how do you commercialize that attention?
Yeah, that's a good question. Star Wars is not in the business of getting more Giphy views. Neither is Pokemon, neither is anybody in the space. I think what they're doing is they're looking at it as an added kind of opportunity to stay relevant, right? To get closer to where people are, and people are on their phones, they communicate, right? And so Star Wars has that fan base, which I always feel really, I feel really bad when people start bringing up the comparison that like we lapped them, because it's like, in reality, we really didn't do anything here. What we did though, right, is adopt today's platforms, adopt today's distribution channels to our advantage, right? Just like how Star Wars did in their days, right? If their only source of distribution was through comics, right, or is through these films, right? Whatever means of breaking through their barriers, right, and to dominate certain verticals, whether it was, because they were one of the first IPs to really kind of break through the VFX component, right? So it's like, can you make noise in certain industries? What type of fresh perspectives do you bring to the table? And so though Pudgy Penguins hasn't necessarily hit that kind of harped on that note where it was like we brought something refreshing to the table outside of having a really strong community, which is the power of Web3. I think that's a really strong tool that should not be overlooked. The more we talk to a lot of Hollywood execs, they're trying to scratch their head and figure out how do we achieve this? What is Web3 at its core? And so one of the core elements for us is the power of community. And so, I think we're doing the right things in today's generation, right? We had so many different opportunities to create long-form content, animated films, short series, go straight to Netflix. We had so many opportunities. Like this could have been a slam dunk opportunity to do some sort of kids TV series, right? Little baby shark type of content. We have so many opportunities, but we had to think like, how do we have buy staying power? And that was creating as many different touch points as possible and trying to maintain relevance in these touch points. Giphy, touch point 1, Instagram, touch point 2, right? Twitter, TikTok, right? AR filters is starting to become a really huge thing for us. Like we're doubling down on AR filters because you put some sort of Penguin affiliated thing, and establish that connection. That's another touch point. So it's just about how many times we can create touch points, just like maybe Star Wars did in their day. And also, companies like Star Wars and Pokemon, it was very art oriented. It's very like the integrity of the artist and the creator themselves. So they were the masters of saying no. They were the masters of paving their own lane and doing it the way that we want to. The beauty about what we're doing today is we have a lot of external forces and pressure to make this IP great because people have vested interest in this IP. And though you can look at that as a challenge, right? It also has an added benefit where you have all these people that are motivated and constantly championing Pudgy Penguins just so it can have much more awareness in the space, much more visibility. And every single day we have these motivated, I don't want to say affiliates, but I would say participants / community that's pushing Pudgy Penguins up to a point where Hollywood execs, I mean, we just got off a call earlier today with an exec that's very, very, very reputable in the Hollywood space. He's absolutely obsessed with Pudgy Penguins. He's pitched this to other people. Like people are talking about Pudgy Penguins because we're doing things that traditional IP aren't used to doing, or because they're such big brands, right? It's like trying to move a Titanic ship in a different direction, right? Like it takes a Herculean effort to point a behemoth company to try to go small. And so we're starting small, but our reach is much more grander at the end of the day because of the power of social media. And so we're just trying to leverage that and double down in, in areas that are show that they can push the brand forward. Monetization has always been a topic of discussion for us, for sure. To monetize it from Giphies, it's not possible. You take people down this funnel, right? You have top of funnel awareness, which is Giphies, Instagram, etc. The next thing is creating that emotional connection, right? Because everything else is just surface. Like you'll see a penguin, you use a penguin, you're not thinking twice, like, okay, well, let me go and explore this brand a little bit. You're thinking twice because you've seen the penguin everywhere. And now you're like, I got to figure out where this is coming from. And so you're going through that next stage, which is like, all right, what is Pudgy Penguins down to a core? I've been seeing it everywhere. I got to figure it out. And so the next thing for us is lore and story, right? Is to be able to create that deep emotional connection with the user. At the end of the day, if we don't take advantage of this opportunity to bring people into that story, it'll just be a surface level thing. It'll never have an emotional connection with a human being ever. It'll just be a meme. It'll just be a topic of discussion for 5 minutes, but it'll never be something that lives in people's hearts and minds and get passed down to their friends and to their children, to siblings, so on and so forth. So monetization comes much later. Though we are monetizing through retail, right? We are monetizing through NFT sales, right? And royalties. There are those small little benefits, but I think just given the position that we're in, right? This is the beauty about the Web3 community. We don't have to aggressively think like, how do we go out there and try to squeeze as many dollars as possible, right? It's like, let's just try to maintain a steady course. Let's just try to do the right thing as many times as possible. Let's try to put out the best thing as many times as possible. And eventually people will start asking themselves like, hey, I want to buy a shirt. Where can I buy a shirt? I want to buy a toy. Where it's like, well, you could already buy a toy from Pudgy Penguins, but in terms of expanding your product line, right, and into different areas, I think people will start asking for it, and that's when you start giving it to them. And that comes purely with time.
I think one of the more attractive things about the brand is that, like Michael's parents as a case study, older people like it, younger people like it, kids like it. It's attractive to everybody, every consumer base. When you guys started this thing off, and you might even think about it this way right now, I don't know, we'll ask the question, is your goal to replace the hearts of minds of people that already like existing brands like Pokemon, Digimon, these other things like Hello Kitty, to replace those people? Or is it to go after the lookalike audiences who they fit the profile of who this be most attractive to?
I would throw that question back to you and ask you, do you want, are there brands who replace other brands for you, or do you appreciate having an affection towards a few different brands because they all possess that unique charm that isn't something that is comparable amongst others, but you as a human prefer to like a few different things? Or do you just are just a crazy fan over one thing? Because those are two different consumers.
Similar to creators, Peter, when Logan Paul first started off, his audience was different than it is now. Similar to my likings and my attraction level, I've grown to like different things and then moved on to different things. So I've gone in phases. There's never been one thing that's stuck with me as much as watching sports has. But collectibles included, I've gone through stages. Pokemon, Halo, blah, 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 blah. It's gone through those stages for me. So I don't think it's been one or the other. I think it's been a bit of both depending on where I am in my life cycle. But obviously I'm one person, so using that as a data set is not fantastic. But that's the answer to my question. Or to your question.
Yeah, it's a really good answer. And so I'll come back to you and say that for Pudgy Penguins, our goal was to not, it would have been very easy for the likeness of the IP to be a children first brand, right? Cute penguins, the art style, right? I mean, you look at it, you would assume this is a kid's brand. Every product that we've done, and this is since the birth of Pudgy Penguins, right? The first product that was ever launched, which were the NFTs, right? Since birth, this brand has always been, it's been positioned to treat the primary audience as young adults and collectors. The secondary audience is what comes given the natural likeness of the brand, right? Which is tweens and children. And so every product, every single experience that we've kind of developed up until this point has always been optimized towards the primary audience. Why? Because the primary audience is the audience that's going out there to stores and buying it. The primary audience is the one who has the credit card. The primary audience that's usually the one to kind of discover a lot of these different things. And then once you create some sort of emotional attachment, you feel the need, you feel the urge to express this idea, your affection, and share it with your friends. If that idea and that IP and just that moment of impact resonates with you so much that you feel the need to tell others, right? Then that kind of gets passed on. And so we look at Pudgy Penguins as kind of like a linear curve, right? You have the children and tweens, and then you have the young adults and collectors here, right?
Peter, quick question. Do you sell to the kids' parents because they have the credit card, or is it to the kids?
You look at Walmart consumers, it's parents walking to buy the stuff for their kids.
Okay.
Right? We've never created things, for kids to buy, right? It's usually been the adults that buy it first and give it to their siblings and their children and so on and so forth. And so if you look at this linear curve here, we have the tweens and children and we have the young adults and collectors. We create products that primary focus on here that then get passed down here. So when you look at liking a brand, if you're a child, we've created every single experience as you evolve, as your mindset evolves, up until you hit the young adult collector mentality. And so if we optimize and we continue hone in on that linear curve structure, right, that's something that will greatly benefit us over time. And we can always find it to be attractive for the younger audience, right? And as they grow up and as they find other things cooler, can Pudgy Penguins be just as cool 5 years from now, when you're 15 years old, compared to when you were 10 years old? Can you find a product that finds a place for you? And that's kind of what we've kind of oriented to kind of align ourselves with. Because if you put yourself in just a younger demographic brand, you can never size up. You can always age down, right? And aging down is the easiest thing for a brand that makes cute Pudgy Penguins, right? The challenge is, can you make young adults resonate with your IP? And I think that's where the beauty about NFTs, the digital collectibles, right? That's already been answered. That question has been answered. The high-end collectibles that we do, the children aren't buying $250 collectibles and reselling them on eBay, right? It's the young adults, young collectors, right, who have an affinity for other IPs similarly. We're not trying to replace Pokemon, right? We're just trying to find a place in your heart. We're trying to find a small little nook that Pudgy Penguins can come in and just basically find a really cozy place to stay in. And now it's Pokemon, it's Hello Kitty, it's Pudgy Penguins, it's any IP. If you're that kind of persona, right? Some people don't resonate with this stuff. They look at this and say, well, it's just a children brand. You would argue to them, be like, no, this is bigger than that. Some people just don't get it. And those are not our consumers.
Peter, you asked me the question because you're going for checkmate. I respect that a ton. Michael, over to you.
Yeah, I wanted to say that, I've been to tons of Pudgy Penguin events, tons of different activations. Luca's always there shaking hands, talking with every person online. And then you guys got an amazing team. You got Elizabeth, Foxy, Bo, PP, Kevin, Burko, all these legends that you guys have put together. And basically my question is, it's very hard to find competent people in the space. How did you guys build this team to get to the point where everyone's literally on the same page and you're executing the way you guys are? Because it really shows what it takes to really have a successful project. Half of the battle is to have the right team.
What's crazy is the team was already here before we took over, right? The DNA of what it is to be a Pudgy Penguin, what it is to be a part of the huddle, to to brave the cold, right? To withstand the harshest times for the IP. Every person that's been here since the beginning has been a part of our brand, and we didn't come in and replace them. We embodied their ethos. We embodied their approach to what Pudgy Penguins should be. All we came to do is just expedite the process of building this brand, right? Myself, Luca, Lorenzo, Vedant, Austin, the core team, we're just tools and resources to make things happen. We will work hard for you. We will create a legacy that we can all leave behind, and we can make it easier for the next people to come in and manage this brand. But it's the community, right, that helps us position ourselves in front of the right type of people. And so, building the right kind of team, I think we just got really lucky because we bought into a team that all we have to do, just the same way we're both, all three of us are having this conversation, We just had to preach our vision. We just had to say, this is what we would love to achieve for the brand. And the core community that was there since day one just happened to resonate with it. So in order for us to make this happen, we had to come together, right? We had to lean into people's strengths, and those who had shared some sort of weaknesses, we didn't try to improve their weaknesses. We just leaned into people who had the polar opposite strengths, right? And so together, we were able to achieve, what I like to call as a dream team. From a hiring perspective, you have to lean into people's strengths as well. And so you have to be a really good people person. You have to know how to manage expectations. You have to know how to motivate, and you have to know how to move your team forward. And so Luca has been really very, very good at championing the vision publicly. With my team and internally, I like to champion the vision internally, and I like to get people behind an idea, and I like to push them forward. And so long as you have a combination of these different personas who are always thinking about others, right, and not just themselves, that's how you create a really good foundation for a good team. There's a lot of strategic things that we probably won't go over, on how to build the right kind of team. But to answer your question in short, again, if we already had somewhat resemblances of a good team, all we just had to do is put the legwork in, because they've already been working since the collection dropped to hold this brand together for as long as possible, right? And then we just came in and we expedited the growth. We took something that was great and we made it even better with the help of the rest of the community.
Yeah, that really says a lot. Imagine working at a company and then one day you walk in, they got a brand new CEO. You don't know what he's going to say or what he's going to do. So the fact that you guys were able to come, outline their strengths, and continue working with them, that is definitely a formula for success. Big shout out to the whole team over there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Peter, so one package of this, you guys mostly have a second go at Walmart, right? The second go, I think, is more important than the first one, because you proved you can do it. Now do it again. I think double downing on what works is very good. Is there a different strategy going forward the second time, or is it going to be do what currently works, faster, better, improved, more volume?
It's definitely the second. We already know what works. We already know what doesn't. We had the opportunity to test a lot of different things in the first year. The second opportunity is a lot more difficult, I have to be honest, because, Pudgy Penguins is a holiday brand, right? We're very much thematic to Q4. Also, consumer sentiment is different, right? People are encouraged to go shopping. It's really hard to convince somebody to go shopping at the top of the year, right? Especially try to go buy a Penguin brand. So not going to lie, it is a huge challenge to basically convince people, but this is not just us. This is every other consumer product good company ever, right? This is not peak season for a lot of brands. We all look forward to Q3 and Q4. Q1 and 2, it's just about, staying power. It's about creating the great products, going through logistics, going through supply chain, going through product development, going through research, and aligning your resources. And then that when you put all that to good use in Q3, Q4, and really get that return on investment you're looking for, I think we would have drowned already since day one. But again, I have to keep going back to the community aspect. The simple idea of being able to drop a message in Discord and tell people, hey, go tell your next 5 friends to go buy Pudgy Penguins is a superpower that is not to be underestimated. I've spent years in consumer product good and, selling direct to consumer experiences. Every single brand ever has always tried to create a community. They just didn't know what it was. They didn't know what a community was. They just said, oh, well, if my customer likes my product, and then so does the other customer like my product, that's creating a community. The community is more than that, right? It's more than just purchasing something, right? It's being able to share the same idea, right? It's aligned incentive, it's aligned interest, right? And so I think that's the beauty about Web3, because people have aligned incentives and aligned interests. And so for you to succeed, if you have aligned incentives and interests, it is kind of like somewhat of your responsibility to go out there and make this happen too, right? Because this is our way of building a decentralized company, and that has to require some people to come in and really help us, kind of galvanize behind the same initiative, right? If our initiative is to, make the biggest splash with retailers, then we're going to go out there and put on a show, right? We're going to make sure that the retailers have good experience. We're going to make sure that people who are buying the products have a great experience. Just create feel-good moments. But again, so many challenges in being able to sell product. And the fact that Walmart came back and said, all right, let's go bigger, puts a lot of strenuous pressure on us. We have some tricks up our sleeve that I am excited to kind of roll out this year. And so we'll see where it goes, right? We're also doubling our retail footprint, which like doesn't help. Like the idea of like trying to sell out more stores and like consistently doubling our retail footprint with more retailers. So very much a physical business, very much a retail oriented business. And hopefully the community keeps the brand afloat.
Peter, to stack the question, what I think is nicely, what has been the conversion from those that have purchased the product and then went into the digital world and activated that digital collectible? Like maybe a percentage. If you have it, fantastic. If you don't, no worries. And then how can we, as a community, activate that more?
Yeah. So I'll answer your second question first. To activate it more, we are launching the alpha in the summer. There's going to be a great opportunity to be a part of the playtesting session, to make improvements, to then refine and work towards a final product that we are okay with launching later this year. Our intent was to launch the product earlier this year, but just looking at the landscape of other projects that spent the last 2 years building something, it was going to do injustice to our IP to basically go out there and create something that was, a fraction of what other companies have done. And so for us, we had to say, okay, you know what? Look, like it goes back to expectations, right? It's like, don't set the wrong expectation. So we had to reframe the expectation and say, look, we want to come out a little bit bigger and better. We don't want to come out and say we're still building, right? We want to come out and say, hey, this is a pressed and polished product. This is a make it or break it moment. And that we're going to see towards the end of the year. And so around the summertime is when we're going to activate this, and end of the year is when we're going to activate this. Now, to answer your first question, the experience itself wasn't a polished experience since day one. We accidentally arrived on the idea of Pudgy World because getting into the world of gaming is a crazy beast. We didn't make that promise in the beginning of the year when we acquired the company that we were going to go into gaming. It just so happened that retail, the way for you to convince retail and push them over the line is if your product comes with more. What is more, right? Is there something, is there a deeper layer behind the toy, right? Because we sell toys, we have toys. Why is Pudgy Penguins the best toy, the best penguin toy to put on shelves? Why are we going to put you guys on here when you guys don't have, a 1/10 of the footprint that these other behemoths that we carry have? So why Pudgy Penguins? So we had to create compelling arguments where we said, look, with the purchase of every Pudgy Penguin toy comes this unique digital experience that takes you on this journey from A to Z. Games, there's customize your igloo, customizing your character, and every time you go buy a toy in stores, which is the motivation to sell through, right? You get to unlock this absolutely unique experience that's catered directly to you, right? And so that creates motive to sell more toys, right? That allows us to create a value proposition that is deeper than just buy my cute toy. It's no, buy the toy and chase the thing that's beyond that, right? Something that will continuously evolve. And so we had planted this idea, we had launched it, we had proven that there is merit here, but the conversion wasn't as great because none of the messaging was as clear as it is today. None of the experiences were ironclad as they are today, right? In a matter of few hours, we should be pushing a new, really refined experience, which I'm happy to. I don't know if we're going to announce it, but people who discover it themselves are going to call it out. So people will be able to go on this new journey and say, "Oh, this is well polished. Like I want to do this now. Now I want to go out there and buy as many of these toys, collect them all, and look forward to the next season that drops and sells through." So, at the very beginning, it was just about figuring out what's working. Now that we know it works, we're optimizing towards a better user journey. We're optimizing towards better messaging, better positioning for the product itself. So then that way we can help increase the chances of our sell through Walmart and all these other retailers because of that polished experience. Had we not polished this experience, we would have been completely screwed on the retail lens, right? Because then there's nothing exciting beyond it, right? But we had to act fast and we had to move fast. And so the experience that we have now is a lot better, effectively making sell-through a little bit easier, and also upping our conversions. Out of the 750,000 toys, and when we announced 750,000 toys, that was maybe a month and a half ago. So we're nearing 1 million toys sold, maybe a little bit over 1 million toys sold. We've hit about 100,000 concurrent users that signed up. And that's that's people logging in after they've created the account. So at the top level, we probably had about 170K, and then at the end of the day, we walked away with about 100K. So
it's a good figure, and I promise, last thing, and I'll shut up and go to Michael. Like, I see this, and I can be totally wrong on this. I see this in the sense that you guys have, the sales are the sales. The things still happen regardless of the conversion there was not, right? It still happened. Conversion, the sales still happen. In a way, is this almost like product seeding, that you almost have to kind of wake up the sleeping giant, the sleeping beast of all people that own those things, and get them to actually go do the thing now? Because they have the product. They own it. They own that thing. Could you consider it a sleeping beast and wake up the beast and actually have them go do it now because they purchased it? It's in their house.
Yes and no. I would say it has to do with a lot with the IP exposure in itself, right? And creating that motivation for people to go buy it. And that's typically done in storytelling way, where people get so emotionally invested. They find the need to go out there and buy this product because they just love it so much, and it needs to live in their home. Because we're such a young brand, you have to do some levels of finesse to basically incentivize the consumer and also these big retailers to make that purchase and take that leap of faith in you, right? And so we had to do certain things to make a compelling argument into why Pudgy Penguins was the better choice to take a bet on, why Pudgy Penguins is the better toy to buy, right? Because it comes with these amazing digital experiences afterwards. Speaking from the side of gaming, traditionally, games will just launch a game. They won't have a distribution channel in place beforehand, right? Keep in mind, we're in over 6,000 locations worldwide with an average sell-through of 100,000 plus toys a month, right? I don't know if that's a positive metric or negative. We still haven't gotten to the final sentiment, but we're selling toys, right? That means over 100,000 people are potentially hitting pudgyworld.com. before it's pudgyworld.com, before it's a real thing, right? So for us to, expand our product offering, we have to lean into areas where we already have distribution. And so Pudgy World is that area where we already have distribution. All we have to do is just tweak and make the experiences a little bit better, effectively making a sweeter, more compelling offer for retailers to basically come in and invest more into Pudgy Penguins, because there is that added benefit of that. And from a consumer standpoint, they just feel excited to buy something. The penguin is cute, right? The penguin's cute. People are buying the penguin without clearly saying, buy it because you're going to get something experiential afterwards. They're buying because the penguin is cute. And then when they rip the box open, they're like, wait, there's more, right? And then when you go through that experience, that digital experience, there's more afterwards, right? So it's kind of like a never-ending experience, which eventually has some sort of cap, but that's typically how we like to approach it.
So my question to you would be, I went to the last VCon. That's where I discovered that you guys had these toys. You had the vending machine. That's where you dropped it. And then someone was like, oh, the whole box that comes with like a mini Pudgy and a bunch of other things is $20. I think it was $20 you guys were selling them for. I was like, this is the best deal I've ever seen in NFTs, because a lot of these projects, they end up dropping a hoodie. The hoodie is like $150, and then you get it and the quality is garbage. And then when I saw what you guys were releasing at Walmart, and it's like $8, and you get something that looks better than every other animal that's on that shelf that you guys are competing against, how did you guys get the profit? Like, how did you guys get the prices to the point where it's so incentivizing for the consumer to buy it? Is this something that you guys looked at and say, hey, let's bring it to the users as cheap as possible so we can get into these households, so that we can get into this Web 2 market and then capitalize it from there? Because I can only imagine, how slim the profit margins must be, because the presentation is phenomenal, the quality of the toy is phenomenal, and the price is just unseen in the NFT space.
I don't think we're optimizing towards being the most affordable product in the NFT space. I think we kind of wholeheartedly look at this and say, okay, well, we had the opportunity to license the likeness of the penguin from certain holders, and we had the opportunity to make it physical. I think that was the mindset that we had, was how can you create a much more deeper connection than just a digital good? And so taking something from digital and taking it physical created that additional bond with the IP, because you saw it and you saw it right in front of you, right? You felt it, you played with it, you saw the whole experience. And so there was something that sparked in a lot of the users and a lot of people who saw this and were like, this feels really good, right? Like, I didn't have a good feeling about Pudgy Penguins before, maybe because the sentiment was different, but this feels really good. This approach is it's really adoptable. It's not daunting. There is, the physical brand appeal is there. I mean, we got very lucky with the IP in itself. I mean, this is a rare opportunity to stand up an IP like this. And so people just saw it for what it was. And so that added a lot of benefit to us doubling down in the physical space, right? And being able to try to go mass distro. Now, would have I preferred to go Walmart, or would have I preferred to go specialty? That's the other question. Because Walmart, Hot Topic, and all these retailers, as great as they are, there is a high chance of you falling off. And that dramatically hurts the brand, not just in the Web3 space, but as a sentiment in general in the world of Web2. It's people in the industry will, call it as a negative thing. If you don't have any good sell-through, like, you're dead. You're dead no matter what you do. So for us, it's a lot of pressure to be able to maintain the sell-through velocity, at the same time be able to make a compelling argument where the margin that we get, we also give a cut to the holders that we're also licensing from. For us to be able to achieve the pricing, obviously we work with master licensing partners who have they've been in the business for 25, 30 years. The toy manufacturing space, you can make toys for $1 or $2, and so the markup is there. At the end of the day, we as Pudgy Penguins don't look at our toys as a massive revenue generator. It does prove that there is monetization capabilities, which has always been proven in our DNA, that we can always monetize, and we can monetize at scale. I mean, think about it. What brand can sell 1 million units after, 12 months of existence? It's unheard of. It's either the worst thing that could have ever happened to us, because after this, it's either downward, which we forecasted so far enough that we played out all possible scenarios where we're ready to make the next moves. I don't think we're going to see that, because we're so ahead of that. We've had a lot of people in our ear tell us, like, hey, you got to be careful, because after you peak this moment, like, you're going to see downward trajectory, blah, blah, blah. And so we've kind of looked at it. We've adjusted our business model, and we've still been able to maintain relevance to some capacity. And that's just to make the Pudgy penguin the most famous penguin in the world. So everything that we're doing is to bring more awareness to the penguin digitally, effectively helping our retail footprint, effectively, keeping strong relationship with retailers, and we'll see where we'll go. I don't know how long we're going to play the retail game, but for now, it's selling through. We're getting in as many houses as possible. More and more people are carrying it around. They're talking about it. They're holding it. I literally, like, my friends and my colleagues, they will literally tell me, like I would gift a box to somebody of toys, and they would go and take it home, and they would send me a text message afterwards. I'm not even bullshitting. I wish I was kidding here. And most of the time I'm in disbelief here, because you get desensitized to, like, what you're creating, so it doesn't feel the same to you, right? Like, some people perceive it as like, oh, it's so massive, it's so big, you have no idea. And I'm just like, really? Damn, that's crazy. Like, I would assume it is, and maybe I would hope it is, because, like, if it's not, that's a problem. But, like, you get these text messages, which started happening a lot more frequently over the last 6 months, and it's like, dude, I'm in this random place, and I have this toy on me, and somebody came up to me and said, dude, I've been seeing these penguins everywhere. Where did you get that? Or I've been seeing these penguins everywhere. That's Pudgy Penguins. And hearing that testimonial, we're like, okay, let's try to keep this momentum for as long as we can. And then when the markets change, when sentiment changes, we refine and we take it from there.
Love it. That's like, for me, it was at the point where I'm looking at it and I'm like, hey, these could be $20 toys, $30 toys, but they're under $10. And to bring it to the people in such a cost-effective way, like you said, it should be able to, like, compound that growth. And then when someone hears about it, they tell their friends, their family members, they're going to the store, they're buying them. Now you create demand. And naturally, when you launch this next wave, I feel like people are going to be lining up for it.
I hope so.
I believe, and history shows as well, that the best businesses are built off principles and fundamentals and not just market trends. Like, market trends come and go, but principles, fundamentals are here forever. I'd probably make a bet that in the next 100 years, music based off principle is still going to be around, as it would probably about social media, self-expression. It's all human-based stuff, right? It's all human-based, innate over the past thousands of years. What principles and fundamentals is Pudgy Penguins built off of?
The DNA of Pudgy Penguins is just, how do we create a feel-good moment, right? From our animations, from our toys, it's how can we optimize towards just that moment of feel good, right? It's like, despite the things that you're going through in life, despite the things that you're experiencing, right? It's like, how much more happier, how much more better can Pudgy Penguins make your day? So whether that's memes, whether that's these relatable animations, like, how many times can we make you laugh? How many times can we, make you fall in love with the brand over and over again? And I think that there is no timestamp on that approach, right? It's a component of humans' anatomy and our just the way that we're built, right? Like, there is that emotional aspect, and so where Pudgy Penguins is going to go and the things that we're going to do are going to come and be, the approach we're going to take is trying to find a place in people's hearts, and usually that's done through story, through lore, but also through just constant reminders that Pudgy Penguins is here, right? Seeing it on gifts, seeing it on animation, seeing the toy in store, right? You're seeing it, it's becoming a part of your life. You just can't help but to grab it. And then when you pull back the layers, like, you can tell that the brand is fundamentally rooted in just feel good, positive vibes. And sounds hippie, obviously sounds super cliche, but it's simple. It just make people feel good, right? I like cooking food, right? Like, I'm a chef by trade. Like, grew up cooking. Cooking has always been my way of making my friends feel really good. I've always invited people to my house. I cook Thanksgiving dinners at Luca's house every single year. I invite as many people. It's that moment that you can call a transactional moment, but it's that moment where I get to create something that people genuinely love and feel the need to go tell their friends about. It's like, yo, were you at Peter's dinner? Like, it's just the moment, like, you get there and just, like, it feels good. It feels good. I feel at home. It doesn't feel weird or alien to me. The food is good. The vibes are good. And so can I do the same thing with Pudgy Penguins, right? When you buy the toy, when you get welcomed into the community, are the vibes good, right? Do you feel like anywhere in the world you go, you have a friend, right? That's where the beauty about Web3 is when you're in this community, do you feel like you're ever alone, or do you feel like you can just ping somebody? It's like, yo, I'm going to New York. Do you want to meet up? You have a friend. You don't know this person, right? You don't know what this person's about, but they love Pudgy Penguins and you love Pudgy Penguins. And it's those two feel-good moments that kind of come together to create a lasting impact. And we've been slowly kind of embracing that as part of our ethos and our principles to follow, is how many good feel-good moments can create. That's why Art Basel, I usually like to go crazy. Just for what it's worth, we're always going to have Art Basel events. They're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. My ability to, bring the best foods, the best drinks, the best vibes, just like you just feel it. You can't create a vibe, right? It's like certain elements that help contribute towards a vibe, right? And I can't go and put this in a deck and say, this is how we optimize for a vibe, right? It's like, no, it's just the products that we make. It's the messaging on the products, the people who hold it. It's people who talk about it, right? Do they give you a good feeling? And so that's I think that's the biggest kind of core value / principle, and just constantly do good. Just optimize with good intentions. I think good intentions keep the brand alive. Again, they sound super cliche, but I'm telling you, like, when the noise dies down and you've been depleted and exhausted of your cash, or you've been depleted and exhausted of your energy, you're going to want to tap back into your feel good moments and go back to Pudgy Penguins, or go back to something that makes you feel good. And hopefully that's Pudgy Penguins.
It's a great take. Guys, I appreciate your time, both of you. Thanks a ton. Peter, where can we find you? The obvious. What's your handle? What should people be looking out for Pudgy Penguins with the next 6 months?
My handle is Chef Goyardi on Twitter. Make sure to follow our building journey on YouTube. Channel name is at Luca Nets. Just look up Luca Nets, but the channel name is called Building in Public. We document our journey towards building a company, and one day we can look back at it and say, this is how we did it. These are all the different things that we did. So for those of you who are in the entrepreneurial space and who are looking to find some motivation in terms of, how to approach business and just, balancing life, hopefully Building in Public is a good outlet for you guys to follow. The next 6 months, like I said, we're doubling down on that core product, which is Pudgy World, and making that experience as polished as possible. I'm not looking to get anything from Web3. I'm not looking for anything from, crypto Twitter to, gas up our Pudgy World experience. I'm going after people who are already in love with Pudgy World, and it's just for them. It's for people who already like Pudgy Penguins. It's for people who want more from Pudgy Penguins. And how many times can I improve on that experience? And we have a lot of people who like Pudgy Penguins. We have a lot of people who ask for more. We have people who want to be a part of the story and be a part of the fan fiction experiences. And so I just want to create outlets in which people can express themselves and participate and be a part of that journey. And, most importantly, how can we start bridging the Web2 audience into Web3? And I think that all starts with a warm, open arm community that can, play its part in onboarding as many people onto the space. And hopefully Pudgy Penguins sits at the top of, that feel good moment of like trust, that there's good trustworthy brains in the space. So maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months, but Pudgy World, optimizing for feel good moments, and later this year, get something really special cooking up. So don't want to touch on it too much because it's not in 6 months. So you asked me 6 months, so it's not 6 months. It's the 6 months after. You should ask me about
Drop
12
the
months.
alpha.
Yeah. Guys, turn noties on. Turn those noties on. Yeah, I should have asked 12 months. Silly me. You said, silly me. That's my oops. Michael, where can people find you and all the stuff you're doing, keeping people safe?
Yeah, definitely. But my name is Michael K, Partnership Director for WalletGuard. Everything about WalletGuard is on our website, walletguard.app. And my Twitter is michaelk.eth, michaelkdcl. My DMs are open. We love working with communities. Let's talk about wallet safety and security before people in the community start to lose your assets. So my DMs are open, and let's help you protect your crypto. Let's go.
Thanks, guys. See you guys next time. Thanks a ton.